Welcome you all to Believers IAS Academy. In this today's topic of the day discussion, we will be discussing an important topic from the geography perspective. And talking of the topic, we will be mostly discussing or talking about aquifers because of the recent discovery by the scientists of the newly found aquifers, especially the offshore aquifers in the Atlantic Ocean. So this is a news, and also aquifer as a topic from the prelims point of view, and even for the mains perspective, mains point of view, it is a very important topic, not just because it comes in the UPSC syllabus, but because of its relevance in the present day concerning water problems, right? Water problems or water scarcity. So all of these topic makes aquifers an important concept to be studied, because we will be discussing what aquifers are and also to an extent what offshore aquifer is, and we will also try and study about the different types of aquifers, what it is, the formation, right? And also in the end we will solve one prelims question with respect to this particular topic. So as we discussed, why is it in news? It is because of the recent discovery by the scientists, some researchers, geologists, hydrogeologists, that an offshore aquifer is recently found in the Atlantic Ocean, makes it very important to study. So now, what is an offshore aquifer, right? Or even before we study what an offshore aquifer is, let's try and understand what aquifer is in the first place, right? So aquifer is a geological formation, one of the geological formation which has the capacity or which stores or transmits or even yields what? Water. So it is one of the geological formation which stores, transmits and yields a huge amount of water underneath the Earth's surface or the ground. And talking about the properties, what are the properties of an aquifer? If you have to understand, there are two important properties. One is they are highly porous in nature, and next is they are highly permeable. So these are the two important properties of the aquifer or an aquifer, which makes it a natural sponge, which can retain water because of the two interesting characteristics. One is being highly porous and highly permeable, right? So this natural sponge underneath the Earth's surface is what we call as an aquifer. So if we see the diagram, so the blue area here, this, and also the one underneath this is what we call as an aquifer. And what is an offshore aquifer? The same aquifer which normally, so this is an aquifer which is found on the terrestrial part of the land or the world, and the same thing if it extends underneath the ocean surface, then we call it as an offshore aquifer. Simple, the concept is same. Just because the aquifer is extended towards the ocean, or it goes beyond the ocean, or let's say the normal terrestrial land, and it extends all the way to the seafloor bed, we consider this as offshore aquifer, right? And there are two important types of aquifers that is also important. One is unconfined aquifer, another one is confined aquifer. Of course, these things very important from the examination point of view. Let's say there is a question about aquifer or even offshore aquifer, you have to know all these details, right? So one is unconfined aquifer, another one is confined aquifer. So what is an unconfined aquifer? It is that aquifer or the water body, right, or a part of aquifer. Now what constitutes aquifer? Basically sandstone, right, small permeable rocks, right? All of this constitute your aquifer. It's not that it's only water underneath it, right? It's a layer of your topsoil, or I can say it is a layer of your earth, which is highly permeable and highly porous, which makes water retention easy in that particular place, right? So now there are two types. One is unconfined, another one is confined. So what is an unconfined aquifer? It is that aquifer which is not sandwiched between an impermeable membrane. So now what is an impermeable membrane? We have something brownish here, right? So there's a brownish strip, right, alongside the earth's bed, and which continues to extend even towards the seafloor. And this one we call it as an impermeable. So this particular impermeable stretch, right, this divides a confined aquifer to an unconfined aquifer. So when we say that an aquifer is unconfined, it means it is not sandwiched between this impermeable layer, right? It means the aquifer or the unconfined aquifer is pretty much open to the atmosphere. And what are the benefits of this? Hence, it is open to the atmosphere. It is easy to recharge through rainwater, or even the water runway to, even the rivers, especially mainly the rainfall, right? So it is easy to recharge, right? And also the availability of these aquifers is kind of very easy, right? So this is all about unconfined aquifer. Now talking about the confined aquifer, it is that which is sandwiched between two impermeable membranes or two impermeable layers of clay or even slate, right? So now what are the characteristic features of this? So basically they are very difficult to extract, considering that it is so deep, and also the digging has to undergo, or the excavation also has to undergo, or to bypass this impermeable membrane also, right? So hence the availability of water is difficult. Even the recharge of unconfined aquifer is also difficult, right? And also another point is the pressure is very high. It is very high as compared to the atmospheric pressure. So the water that gets available or that comes from the unconfined aquifers, usually the pressure is very high, right? So of course these are pretty much the basic which are supposed to be known, and if you know this much, this is sufficient. One is unconfined, confined, impermeable membrane, and then we have to know about what an offshore aquifer is, right? And the definition of aquifer, and also the properties. Clear? So now that an aquifer, what is an aquifer is clear, now we'll understand about all the different things. So coming back to the definition, it is bodies of rock or sediment beneath seabed that store fresh water, similar to land aquifers, as we discussed. Now it was first identified in the year 1970s, but due to, or let's say because of the modern surveys using electromagnetic imaging and drilling have revealed their massive scale. Means it was discovered in 1970s, and even today it is discovered in few places which we will see, and it is found off coast of Australia, China, North America, South Africa. So it means that the relevance of this particular aquifer, or we can find this aquifer around the world. It has a global spread, but still it is not just confined to these areas because of the difficulty in terms of identifying it, right? And also because of the modern technology and the modern electromagnetic radiation technology which they have used to identify, has enabled them to find out that these are the areas which houses the aquifers, right? And also it is not just only limited to it, it can be sourced, or it can be found throughout the entire world, right? But however, right now the global spread, you can imagine, or mostly you have seen in the Australian coast, China, North America, and even parts of South America. And talking about on the key feature of an offshore aquifer, it can stretch up to 90 kilometer offshore, right? Which means this particular aquifer that we discuss, so this is an offshore aquifer. So this offshore aquifer can reach, or can even cross 90 kilometer outside the coastal belt, is what is one of the important feature of the offshore aquifer. Talking about its volume, it can hold a capacity of 1 million cubic kilometer of fresh water, which is equivalent to 10% of terrestrial fresh groundwater. So this makes it very important to know for the mains answer writing as well, especially when there is a, or even for that matter, society, right? And even for that matter, geography, even parts of your GS3. You can use all of these important statistics to explain certain topics, especially related to groundwater depletion, right? And even water scarcity. And this can be used as a way forward, going forward and writing the examinations, right? So the present aquifer which is present, it is estimated to hold 1 million cubic kilometer of fresh water, about 10% of the terrestrial fresh groundwater, right? Talking about the offshore aquifers. And talking about its preservation, it is protected by a cap rock layer, which is clay-rich sediments that prevents seawater mixing. So basically, this was the impermeable membrane that we discussed, or the impermeable layer of clay-rich sediments, which separates the bottom, or let's say the confined aquifer to the unconfined aquifer, right? Done. Now going forward, what are the significances? One is, it is an alternative source of water. It could provide water to water stressed areas and also help certain areas to ward off or fight off droughts, or even places with less rainfall. This encaching of this aquifer can be very helpful. Now another important significance is the strategic resource. Countries with limited fresh water may use these as reserves and can also reduce dependence on expensive desalination plants. And then talking about the climate change mitigation, especially few coastal areas, right, which are vulnerable to water crisis, like the Cape Town, Chennai, right, may benefit from utilizing or being able to encash the offshore aquifers. And it could be a crucial element for food security and agriculture sustainability of these coastal areas, which are usually problematic or which usually finds problem with respect to water. However, it's also have few challenges, because the first and most important challenge is the very high cost of extraction, right? Talking about the location as to where it is located, it requires deep sea drilling and pumping infrastructure, which is very costly and capital intensive rich. And then all the technical barriers which, for example, preventing saltwater intrusion during extraction is difficult, because we are talking about extracting fresh groundwater through the natural seawater, right? You have to drill through the natural seawater, which is usually very saline, and to even extract that fresh water without having to mix with the salt water of the sea, the entire process is very cumbersome and it is very difficult. And then ecological risks, potential damage to marine ecosystems and seabed, right? It will drastically affect the coral reefs, and even to an extent all the benthic species which are underneath the ocean surface, right? So that is also another important challenge. Government issues, because offshore aquifers usually lie in international waters, raising concerns of ownership disputes and regulation. So I know, I believe the international water boundaries of each and every country. So all these aquifers usually come come at a particular point where there is always a confluence between two international water boundaries, right? So then hence, when the government is involved, the aquifers, the extraction becomes even more complicated, right? So that is what it is. And talking about the sustainability, it can lead to over extraction. Over extraction could lead to irreversible contamination reserves with the seawater. Just like simple example is the sand mining. The present state of sand mining, due to its over exploitation, what are the drastic effects that it is leaving behind to the water bodies, or let's say, for example, the river systems in the country, right? So similar kind of sustainability crisis is what also can be seen if proper regulation is not maintained in extracting the oversea, or let's say overshore aquifers. Now that's all for this particular video. Even before we end the video, let's solve one prelims question. Consider the following statements regarding offshore aquifers. They are freshwater reserves found beneath the ocean floor, similar to land aquifers. They are believed to have formed only due to melting glaciers during the Ice Age, and offshore aquifers are estimated to contain nearly 10% of the world's terrestrial fresh groundwater. Which of the statements are correct? Use the comment section and leave your answers below. Anyway, that's all for this particular video. I hope you have clearly understood what an aquifer is, especially offshore aquifer, right? So we'll come back with more such interesting videos. If you have not still followed the YouTube channel, please consider subscribing Believers IAS YouTube channel. That's all for this particular day. Signing off, this is Madan Gopal. Have a beautiful day.